available.
Coming up, we'll have a recap of the previous Padres game, a preview of today's starting pitching matchup, our keys to the game. Plus, we'll hear from manager Mike Shildt.
Ultimately, what we're here to do is win.
From the Padres Radio Network, here's Sam Levitt.
San Diego Padres baseball coming up on 97.3 The Fan and the Padres Radio Network. Today, the Padres take on the Washington Nationals in the final game of a 3-game series. Our starting pitching matchup today: on the mound for the Nationals, left-hander MacKenzie Gore, and for the Padres, right-hander Nick Pivetta. Hi, good everyone. Sam Levitt with you inside the loft here at the Western Metal Building at Petco Park. First pitch coming up in the rubber game of this 3-game series at 1:10 p.m. Coming up in the next 50 minutes, we have a lot to do. You'll hear from Padres left-hander Adrian Morejon. You'll hear from today's National starter and former Padre MacKenzie Gore. You'll hear from Padres manager Mike Shildt. And in just a little bit, we check in with Padres radio voice Jesse Agler. But first, it's time to set the table, brought to you by Fraser Farms Market. Set your table with the highest quality of natural and organic products from Fraser Farms Market, a San Diego original since 1971, with 3 locations: La Mesa Vista and Oceanside, and at FraserFarmsMarket.com. Padres entered today 43-36. They enter 5.5 games out of first place in the National League West and a half game out of the final wild card spot in the NL. Meanwhile, the Nationals come in 33-47. It has been a rough month of June. Just 5-17 are the Nationals in this month. That included an 11-game losing streak. Well, the Padres fell behind early in the middle game of this series last night. They were trying to avoid a second consecutive loss to the Nats. Let's rewind.
Did you miss what happened in the last Padres game? Let's take a look back with our Padres Rewind on the Padres Radio Network.
The Padres trailed 3-0 in the 4th inning yesterday when they started to get it going against Nationals starter Trevor Williams. Luis Arraez hit a 1-out single. Gavin Sheets hit a double. That got Arraez to third. The Padres made it 3-1 on an RBI ground out from Xander Bogaerts. Jake Cronenworth was next.
Cronenworth swings to the first pitch, lines it deep to right. This one is off the wall. Sheets will score. Cronenworth on his way to second. The throw not in time. RBI double Jake Cronenworth. And a 1-run game here in the 4th.
Padres trail 3-2 through 4 in the bottom half of the 5th. Martin Maldonado led off.
Williams' first pitch here, hit in the air to deep left center field. Wood is back. This one is going to go! Martin Maldonado ties it up. His 4th home run of this season. And another Maldonado ambush has made it 3-3.
That's all the Padres would score in the 5th inning. We were still tied at 3 going bottom 6. Williams walked 2 in a row to start the inning. He was replaced by righty Cole Henry. He walked Cronenworth to load the bases with nobody out. Jose Iglesias then dug in.
1-1. Iglesias swings, hits it on the ground at first base. Lowe has it, brings it to first. That's all they'll get. Sheets slides home. And for the first time tonight, the Padres lead. It's 4-3.
That's all the Padres scored in the 6th inning, but they did have a 1-run lead. The Padres bullpen ended up being the story of the game. Adrian Morejon went 2 innings. Jason Adam went an inning and 2/3. Jeremiah Estrada went an inning and a third. They got the game to the 9th inning. Padres still leading just 4-3. Robert Suarez came in.
3-2 pitch. Wood swings and misses. Strike 3. Another changeup. That's all he saw. And Suarez slams the door in a 1-2-3 9th inning as the Padres come from behind to beat the Nationals by a final of 4-3.
The final combined line for those 4 Padres relievers: 6 innings, no runs, 2 hits, 5 strikeouts, and no walks. They were all absolutely terrific, and the Padres hung on for a 4-3 win against the Nationals, setting up the rubber game of this 3-game series. And now today, the Padres go for a series win. You may have seen this already, but earlier today officially announced that Robert Suarez will begin serving what is now a 2-game suspension for hitting Shohei Ohtani last week in LA. Originally a 3-game suspension, reduced down to 2, and Suarez will begin serving that suspension for today's game. So the Padres will have just the 25-man roster both today and on Friday in Cincinnati, and we'll talk a little bit more about that a little bit later in our pregame coverage. Right now, let's go inside the Jerry Coleman Broadcast Center.
Let's take a trip up to the Padres broadcast booth for a deep dive on today's matchup with Jesse Agler in our Padres game preview on the Padres Radio Network.
We're joined by Jesse Agler from inside the Padres radio booth. Jesse, before I get to you, I just have a very special guest in front of me that I have to mention. I have Shirley in front of me, who I just got told is celebrating her 95th birthday at the ballpark today. So happy birthday, Shirley.
Wow.
That is wonderful. Hope you have a great, great day here at the ballpark. Very, very nice. All right, Jesse, to the baseball here.
Hold on. Happy birthday,
yes, Jesse,
Shirley.
go ahead.
Oh,
you hear that?
Gosh.
Jesse says happy birthday as well,
spending
Shirley.
it with us.
Very nice. Everybody very happy here inside the loft. Okay.
Oh.
Happy birthday to Shirley. Very nice, Jesse. Taking a look at the lineup here today. Top of the lineup, Jesse, very, very different than what we've seen for the most part, really all season. Luis Ariz leading off, Manny Machado batting second, Jackson Merrill batting third, Fernando Tatis Jr. in the cleanup spot today. Your thoughts on the new look top of the order today?
Yeah, I mean, we went like all season long without having anything change in terms of the lineup, outside of the usual injuries and days off and that kind of thing. And now twice in a week, we get something of a shakeup. I'm fascinated by it. I like it. I assume maybe it's a lefty thing with MacKenzie Gore on the mound, at least this version of it. But I like it. I think, Mike Shildt, as we've heard him say many times over the years, he is not going to overreact to anything, but he also says he doesn't want to underreact to anything. And so I think Mike waited, really about as long as he possibly could before doing anything to shake it up. And, circumstances kind of change as the year goes along. And there came a point a couple of days ago where for, whatever reason or reasons, he thought, all right, time is right to switch this thing up a little bit. And they put Ariz in the cleanup spot. And, you had Tatis, Merrill, and Machado in front of him. And now today, another version, another switch. Manny's hit third, every single game all year. And so it'll be fascinating to see how it goes here today. It'll be even more fascinating to see if this is kind of a new normal for the Padres going forward against lefties.
Yeah, some malleability with the lineup, which is always nice, and we'll see how the top of the lineup does today. Padres are missing the key guy in that lineup. We'll talk a little bit more about that later in our pregame coverage. Jesse, you mentioned him, MacKenzie Gore, the left-hander, former Padre, on the mound for the Nationals. It's interesting, Gore at one time, the top pitching prospect in the minor leagues, gets traded to Washington. It's been a little bit up and down for him, but it feels like based on the overall numbers, like MacKenzie Gore, really this season in particular is starting to find his stride in a major way. He's been very good.
No doubt about that. And I think it's a really good lesson, reminder, whatever you want to call it, that, it doesn't come automatically. It doesn't usually come immediately for young guys, particularly starting pitchers. There are a lot of things that have to happen for a young starting pitcher to have success. Very rare is the Paul Skeens just kind of burst onto the scene, keep it going the next year kind of guy. Very, very often there are really, big missteps that young starters make early on in their careers. And I think we all have to accept that. We all have to understand what they're doing is very difficult. There are lessons that can really only be learned the hard way, on the field and making mistakes and getting hit and all those kinds of things. At some point it's got to click. And it would certainly appear from a little bit of a distance that it has clicked for MacKenzie Gore this season. He has struck out more batters than anybody in the National League. The ERA probably he would like to come down a little bit, as the year goes along. I don't know what he gets, in terms of run support, not too much, but he's certainly looking like he's putting it all together here in 2025.
Nick Pivetta on the other side of this pitching matchup here today. We'll talk plenty more about Nick Pivetta coming up in a little bit, and I'm sure you and Tony will talk plenty about Pivetta today as well. Jesse, as always, appreciate the time. Thank you for joining in on the 95th birthday celebration for Shirley. Very, very nice to have her here. Enjoy the game, and we'll talk to you at the top of the hour.
Road ERA, by the way, is what I meant to say. You're welcome. Happy birthday, Shirley, if she's still hanging out, and thank you, Sam. Enjoy the baseball game.
All right, that's Jesse Agler joining us on our EcoWater SoCal Padres pregame show here on the Padres Radio Network as we get ready for today's game. Coming up at 1:10, series finale between the Padres and the Washington Nationals. Padres, just so you know, against left-handed starters this year, MacKenzie Gore, one of those. Well, it's been a little tough for him. Padres are only 12-12 this season against left-handed starters, and for a little bit of context, they are 31-24 against right-handed starters this season. So lefties have presented a problem. We'll see if they can avoid that kind of problem here today against a guy they traded away in the Juan Soto deal back in the summer of 22, and that is left-hander MacKenzie Gore. When we come back, we'll have the full starting lineup for you. We'll tell you about one Padre that is not in the lineup today, a late scratch, and we'll hear from Padres manager Mike Shildt. Plus, a little bit later, I go one-on-one with Adrian Morejon, and we hear from today's starting pitcher for Washington, left-hander MacKenzie Gore. First pitch coming up in just a little bit on what is, by the way, a gorgeous, gorgeous Wednesday here in America's finest city. I got to the ballpark this morning around 8:30 a.m. When I tell you it was the most beautiful morning you could imagine here at the ballpark. I was down on the field maybe 25 minutes ago. It is gorgeous. So if you're driving around right now, sitting at home on the beach, whatever you're doing on this Wednesday, however you're enjoying this summer Wednesday in late June, consider coming out to the ballpark today because it is just a spectacular day. It is not too hot, a little light breeze. It is perfect weather for a ball game on this Wednesday. We hear from Mike Shildt and much more when we return on our EcoWater SoCal Padres pregame show here on the Padres Radio Network.
Stay tuned to the
Our EcoWater SoCal Padres pregame show continues here on the Padres Radio Network. First pitch coming up at 1:10 here in downtown San Diego on an absolutely beautiful Wednesday afternoon here at Petco Park. Right-hander Nick Pivetta on the mound for the Padres today. Left-hander MacKenzie Gore on the mound for the Washington Nationals. We'll hear from Gore a little bit later, and we have a full breakdown of today's starting pitching matchup coming up in just a little bit. Let's hear from Padres manager Mike Shildt before today's game.
Let's pull up a seat in the manager's office and hear from Padres manager Mike Shildt, served up by Sin Lee Food, where fresh meets flavor. Find farm fresh produce, bold Asian spices, and gourmet ingredients at 4665 El Cajon Boulevard. Sin Lee Food, the cook's Asian resource.
We continue to monitor Manny Machado's march towards 2,000 hits. He is getting so close to reaching that 2,000 hit milestone at what could be just the age of 32. Manny comes into today sitting at 1,991 hits in his career. So there is a good possibility he could do it on the trip to Cincinnati or Philadelphia, or maybe even in the next homestand here at Petco Park. Really depends on how the next 6-7 games go. But again, he comes into today just 9 hits away from 2,000 on his career. Here was Mike Shildt reflecting on Manny's consistency as he nears 2,000 hits.
Consistency is what ultimately wins for an individual player to have a career. And Manny, because the consistency allows whatever talent you have to come out and to be on display. And in this game, it's about getting things done, result-oriented. And Manny, from a consistency standpoint, personally, has been very good in his career. And then from a clubhouse standpoint, when you have a guy that shows up, plays every day, performs every day, being able to grind and get after it is a really good trait that shows your teammates how and models what this looks like to be a contributing professional player on a winning team.
Really nice answer there on Manny from Mike Shildt. Of course, today marks the end of a very, very difficult stretch for the Padres, maybe the most difficult of their season as far as games and lack of off days. Today is the final game of 13 in a row. It's the final game of a 26-game in 27-day stretch. Mike Shildt has done a nice job giving some guys a day off here and there, also letting guys use the DH spot to get them a day off their feet. Here was Mike Shildt on striking the balance of letting guys play, but also making sure they get their rest during what has been a particularly long stretch.
These guys, they like to play baseball. Even the DH day, no, I need to be on that field. I need to be on the field for my team. I need to be out there for my guys. So, but that's what everyday players and quite frankly, players that compete for championships and have a high expectation to perform do. And so we always are going to be smart about it. Performance is a part of it. I think I've always been pretty good at this, and that's the communication of that individual with the players, but also collectively making sure that, we're strong in the second half.
Well, with each passing day, we get closer and closer to the Major League Baseball trade deadline. And as we know, Padres president of baseball operations and general manager AJ Preller, he likes to get busy at the deadline. Here was Mike Shildt on what he expects for the Padres at the deadline in a little over a month.
We've got one of the more aggressive general managers. Listen, it's hard to qualify who's the best general manager. I wouldn't trade him for anything. Speaking of trades, he's got tremendous value. He's done a tremendous job. I have complete confidence in AJ and anything he does relative to our roster. It's a privilege to work with him. Relative to how aggressive he's going to be, I think he's going to be as aggressive as the parameters within what he has to work with will be.
So we'll see what AJ at the deadline. We are still a ways away from that. A lot of baseball to be played for all 30 teams before the trade deadline, but typically this is the time of year where AJ Preller starts to get cooking. We'll see what AJ cooks up at the trade deadline here in 2025. We'll hear more from Mike Shildt on our post-game coverage coming up later on this afternoon. First pitch coming up at 1:10 here in San Diego. Let's tell you who's hot, who's not.
Which player is locked in at the dish? Who needs to kick things up another notch? This is Who's Hot, Who's Not on the Padres Radio Network.
We begin with a look at the hot category. Gavin Sheets, another base hit last night, now has a career-high 15-game on-base streak. Sheets had a .391 on-base percentage in that span of 15 games. Luis Arraez, also in the hot category. He's in the midst of an 11-game hitting streak. 2 more hits last night. He's batting .327 in the 11-game hit streak. Jackson Merrill also in the midst of an 8-game hitting streak, batting .345 in that span, and that goes back to before Jackson was on the IL. As far as the not category, we take a look at the Padres' number 9 batter, their catcher, Elias Diaz. Diaz is only 1 for his last 14, and that's a look at who's hot, who's not, as we get ready for this series finale against the Nationals. Well, the Padres' initial lineup today is different than the lineup that will actually take the field, and here's why. Xander Bogaerts was in the lineup originally today, but we found out just more than an hour ago that Xander was scratched from today's lineup with left shoulder soreness, and you have to wonder if that's related to a dive into home plate last night. Xander was out at the plate last night on a play with the throw home, infield in, and you could tell in that moment that he might have banged up his left arm, his shoulder. But again, I guess the good news is that Xander was initially in the lineup today, but again, he was scratched from today's lineup with left shoulder soreness. Padres also made a move, put a guy on the IL earlier today. We'll talk about that a little bit later. But the lineup today for the Padres now looks like this. Luis Arraez at first base leading off, Manny Machado at third base batting second, Jackson Merrill in center batting third, Fernando Tatis Jr. in right field batting cleanup. So the top 4 of the lineup, very different today to begin with. Gavin Sheets, the DH, batting fifth, Jose Iglesias at shortstop batting sixth, Bryce Johnson in left field batting seventh, Tyler Wade at second base batting eighth, and Elias Diaz is behind the plate and batting ninth with right-hander Nick Pivetta on the mound. Let's take a look at some Major League headlines as we go around the horn.
Let's examine the most important news and the latest information you need to know in the world of Major League Baseball. Sam Levitt takes you around the horn. Presented by Valley View Casino and Hotel. Get ready for Major League winning when you join Valley View Casino and Hotel's Players Club and receive over $200 in free instant offers. Visit valleyviewcasino.com to learn more today.
Well, it is a very pitching-rich Wednesday around Major League Baseball. Let's give you a few notes here from the out-of-town scoreboard. In Cleveland, future Hall of Famer Max Scherzer will come off the IL after dealing with a thumb injury for a couple of months here to make his second start with the Blue Jays and his first since March 29. So I said a couple of months, almost 3 months between starts for future Hall of Famer Max Scherzer. Second start for Toronto against the Guardians here today. In Cincinnati, Cy Young candidate Max Fried looks to prevent a red sweep of the Yankees. Fried comes in a 7-1 record, a 1.03 ERA in 9 starts following a Yankee loss this season. Jacob deGrom takes the ball for the Rangers today. He's allowed 2 runs or fewer in each of his last 12 starts. He's gone 7-2 with a 1.83 ERA in that span. And oh, by the way, the top 3 strikeout leaders in the NL are all pitching today. The top strikeout leader is the guy on the mound for the Nationals today. MacKenzie Gore comes in 123 strikeouts. Zach Wheeler will face the Mets today at 118. And Logan Webb also pitching for the Giants today. He's at 114. All 3 of those guys on the mound today. Some updates, really one update injury-wise. Marlins right-hander, young talented righty Max Meyer will undergo season-ending labral repair surgery on his left hip. Club announced that before yesterday's game. Meyer had gone on the 15-day IL in early June with a left hip impingement, but he will get now season-ending hip surgery, and that's the latest update on the talented Marlins right-hander. And that's a look at some of the headlines from around the major leagues. We'll have a full look at the out-of-town scoreboard coming up in just a little bit. When we come back, we hear from today's National starter, MacKenzie Gore. We also hear from Padres lefty Adrian Morejon coming up in a little bit as well. First pitch at 1:10 here at Petco Park on the Padres Radio Network.
Hey, gang, it's Woodsy. Ever wanted to
continues here on the Padres Radio Network. Sam Levitt with you inside the loft here at the Western Metal Building at Petco Park as we get ready for today's game. First pitch coming up at 1:10, series finale and the rubber game of this 3-game series between the Padres and the Washington Nationals. Nick Pivetta takes the mound today for the Padres against former Padre left-hander MacKenzie Gore. We'll hear from Gore in just a moment. First, let's give you the latest on number one, in case you missed it, who was a scratch from the Padres lineup today, but also Padres did make a move as far as an IL stint earlier today.
Who's in? Who's out? This is the Bada Fulkerson Injury Report, presented by San Diego's Bulldog Injury Attorneys, who hope you're never in an accident. But if you are, make Bada Fulkerson the first call you make. Hit him up 24/7 at badafulkerson.com.
Well, let's begin with the news we already gave you today. Xander Bogaerts scratched from the lineup due to left shoulder soreness, so hopefully nothing serious for Xander, but he was initially in the lineup today, and he is now not in the lineup for the Padres. No word on whether he will be available off the bench today or not. Padres did make a move. Unfortunately, Ryan Bergert, after getting hit on the forearm with a 103-mile-per-hour line drive last night, took him out of the game. He is going on the IL with a right forearm contusion. The Padres are placing Bergert on the roster with right-hander Sean Reynolds. So you would imagine Reynolds will be available out of the bullpen today for the Padres, but Bergert will miss at least a couple of starts here with a right forearm contusion. As far as the Nationals, we told you yesterday, if you remember, Keibert Ruiz left Monday's game after a foul ball from Josh Bell. Hit him on the head in the dugout. It was a scary moment. A CT scan revealed a lump on the right side of his head. Ruiz went on the 10-day IL yesterday with a head contusion. And finally, an update on Yu Darvish. He will pitch in a simulated game today in Lake Elsinore. And I want to be specific because I had some people reach out to me on social media. Yu Darvish is not pitching in the California League Lake Elsinore game today. He is not pitching in that game. Don't get confused. He is not pitching in the real game. He is simply earlier in the day pitching against hitters in a simulated game in front of no fans today in Lake Elsinore. So don't go to the game tonight thinking you're going to see Yu Darvish. You will not see Yu Darvish. He is pitching, again, a simulated game earlier in the day. Just happens to be at the ballpark in Lake Elsinore. But good news for Yu Darvish, another sim game for Darvish. And that's a look at the injury updates for the Padres and the Nationals. Well, MacKenzie Gore, one time a top prospect in all of baseball for the Padres, made his debut in the brown and gold. Then, of course, MacKenzie traded over to the Nationals in the summer of 2022 in the Juan Soto deal. This will not be the first time the Padres have seen MacKenzie Gore since the trade. They had a very memorable game against MacKenzie last season. We'll talk a little bit more about that later. Here was MacKenzie Gore inside the Nationals clubhouse.
MacKenzie, obviously, it's been a few years since the trade, and you faced this team before back in San Diego, but how's it feel to be back and now getting ready for another start against these guys?
Yeah, it's always nice to come back. But like you said, it was a few years ago. Weather's great. So, yeah, looking forward to it, and should be fun.
You're putting together a nice year. What have been the keys for you now as you continue your major league career?
Yeah, just continuing to improve and learning from everything up to this point. And, we've had a nice start. We just there's a lot of baseball left, so continue to stack good days, and we should be okay.
Obviously, this is still a pretty young team. You've got a lot of really talented young players. How would you describe kind of the season you've had and what you feel like maybe you're building here?
There's been some good and some bad. I think we've done a lot of good things. We just got to figure out how to win a little bit, and there's still a lot of time left to do that. And it's been a tough stretch as of late, but it's just kind of how this season goes. It's a long one, and we've got to figure out how to kind of turn this around and start winning some games.
Is there ever any weirdness playing the team that drafted you, or does it wear off after a while?
I think it was a long time ago. Obviously there's a lot of familiar faces, but that's just kind of part of the game. And it's been a few years now, but it's always nice to come back and play somewhere that you started your career.
What have you learned about yourself since that trade? How have you grown as a person and a player?
Just kind of you just kind of get a lot of games under your belt and figure out how to repeat it as much as you can. I think that's just kind of what this game's all about. I think we're just continuing to try to do that every day and see what happens.
That was Nationals left-hander MacKenzie Gore, the former Padre, on the mound against the Padres in the midst of the best season of his career so far. Here in downtown San Diego, first pitch coming up at 1:10. I go one-on-one with Adrian Morejon coming up a little bit later as well. You'll want to stay tuned for that. Let's give you our keys to this series finale.
How will the Padres unlock a win today? These are the keys to the game. Presented by El Centro Motors Ford. Meet your new Ford General Manager, Greg Ryan, now at El Centro Motors Ford, your new Ford truck, Bronco, and SUV HQ. Call Greg directly at 619-944-0774.
Key number one, enough of Abrams. The Nationals leadoff man has been great in the first two games of this series. 5 for 9 with 3 runs scored. Abrams is in the midst of a 6-game hitting streak, batting .407 in that span with an 1170 OPS and 2 home runs. He has set the tone at the very top of the Nationals lineup. You gotta contain CJ Abrams today. He does a lot of good things at the top of the lineup, and you saw it throughout the first 2 games of this series. He can really run. He is dangerous at the top of that lineup. Got to be better against CJ Abrams here today. Key number 2, focus on the fastball. When you dive in on National starter MacKenzie Gore, it gets interesting. Hitters have not had much success against his breaking balls this year. Opposing hitters are batting just 195 against his curve, just 130 against his slider. When you look at his fastball, though, opposing hitters are batting 300 against it. So by the numbers, they've had far more success against the heater than the breaking pitches. Can the Padres get to that Gore four-seam fastball today? That's key number 2. And key number 3, a very basic key. You look at the top of the Padres lineup. We talked about it with Jesse Agler earlier. It's very different today. Luis Ariz leading off. Manny Machado batting second. Jackson Merrill batting third. Fernando Tatis Jr. batting cleanup. First time Fernando's not been in the leadoff spot so far this season. Hey, new look, top of the lineup. You got to produce. Make your manager look good. Make him look like a genius. New look lineup, got to produce. At the top, stars need to be stars. All the things we always say about the Padres stars, what they got to do. That's a look at our keys to today's game. Let's take a full look at the out-of-town scoreboard, tell you what's going on today around the majors.
Let's take a trip around the bigs to highlight the scores that matter most with our out-of-town scoreboard. Presented by Jensen Premium Beef Patties. Always a hit for grilling.
2 games going on right now. White Sox lead the Diamondbacks 4-2 in Chicago in the 6th inning. We have a marquee matchup in Milwaukee today. Brewers are ahead of the Pirates 4-0 in the bottom half of the 6th inning. The reason that is such a big matchup today, a matchup of 2 young flamethrowers, Paul Skeens, you might have heard of him for the Pirates, but also Jacob Misiorowski for the Brewers, who has begun his major league career in just an electric way. He didn't allow a hit through the first 11 innings of his major league career, and those guys are young and they throw hard. That is a marquee pitching matchup of 2 of the more promising right-handers in baseball. Well, Brewers so far leading 4-0 against the Pirates in Milwaukee. Everything else is coming up later. Red Sox and the Angels after 1 o'clock. It is the Rangers and the Orioles in Baltimore at 3:35. A's and the Tigers in Detroit at 3:40. Blue Jays and the Guardians at 3:40. In Cleveland, Braves against the Mets in New York at 4:10. Yankees and the Reds at 4:10 in Cincinnati. Mariners and the Twins at 4:40 in Minnesota. Rays in Kansas City against the Royals at 4:40. Cubs and the Cardinals in St. Louis at 4:45. Phillies and the Astros in Houston at 5:10. Dodgers in Colorado at 5:40. And finally, Marlins and the Giants in San Francisco at 6:45. We'll have much more on those games coming up a little bit later on in our post-game coverage. When we come back, we dive into the Padres bullpen, and we tell you more about why this could be a very interesting day for the Padres pen. Plus, we revisit what Adrian Morejon did in yesterday's game. He was fantastic, a big part of yesterday's win. I talk with Morejon when we come back on our EcoWater SoCal Padres pregame show right here on the Padres Radio Network.
You're listening to the
Pregame show continues here on the Padres Radio Network. EcoWater SoCal, keeping it soft since 1925. Your water should be perfect. Sam Levitt with you inside the Western Metal Building here at Petco Park on what is an absolutely gorgeous Wednesday afternoon here in downtown San Diego. First pitch is coming up at 1:10. Let's tell you what to watch for in today's game.
What's the one thing Sam Levitt will be keeping his eye on in today's game? This is What to Watch For. Presented by Genesis Home Improvements, San Diego's trusted painting, roofing, and window company. Save 15% today on a new beginning for your home. Visit GenesisHomeImprovementsSD.com.
What to watch for here today. How do the Padres operate their bullpen today? A couple of reasons this is something to watch. Robert Suarez begins serving his 2-game suspension today for hitting Shohei Ohtani last week. And remember, the Padres cannot replace him on the roster. They will play with only 25 guys both today and on Friday in Cincinnati, and they're going to be a guy short as far as the pitching staff and the bullpen. The high leverage guys in the Padres bullpen were used heavily last night. Now, it was nobody's fault. Burgert goes down. Mike Shildt did a great job using the guys to cover innings and get outs, and it worked out. Padres got the win. But take a listen to this. Adrian Morejon pitched 2 innings, 16 pitches last night. Jason Adam, inning and 2/3 last night, 27 pitches. Estrada, inning and a third, 10 pitches. Now, the good news, none of those guys pitched on Monday. But again, you had all 3 of those guys getting more than 3 outs last night. So the question today, what you have to watch for today, how aggressive will Mike Shildt be with the bullpen today? And also this part of it, can the Padres offense score enough today to make it so you can use some of your lower leverage guys out of the bullpen? Of all days, today would be nice for a big offensive outburst to take pressure off the Padres bullpen and make things a little bit easier for Mike Shildt, Ruben Niebla, and company. We'll see if the offense can do that. We'll see how Mike Shildt operates the bullpen today. That's what to watch for in this series finale. Well, speaking of the bullpen, like we said, Adrian Morejon did a great job yesterday, came in a tough spot after the injury, out of nowhere, way earlier than he's accustomed to pitching. He went 2 innings, 16 pitches, a big part of yesterday's win. I talked with Adrian inside the clubhouse earlier today, alongside interpreter Jorge Merlos.
Adrian, you put together a great appearance last night, but it was a really unique appearance in the sense of you have the injury to Ryan Burgert. They call your name to come in. You got to get ready as quickly as you can to enter the game in the 4th inning, a spot you're not used to. Can you walk us through kind of what happened yesterday when you found out you were going in and how you got your mind ready to come in the game?
Llévanos por donde cuando te llamaron para ir a lanzar ayer y cómo podías estar listo mentalmente para entrar ese.
No, es como dije ayer, ya habíamos tenido esa conversación con los coaches antes del juego, que basado en lo que había pasado el día anterior con los lanzadores que habían lanzado mucho, pues era una posibilidad de que yo entrara temprano en el juego. Obviamente es una situación diferente, pero ya yo venía mentalmente preparado para que eso podría pasar.
Oh, it was something that we talked about with the coaches prior to the game, with all the pitchers that we're able to use the day before, and I'd be ready for, if it gets to the moment that I have to come in early, that I would be ready to go.
What was your mindset yesterday knowing you were coming in 4th inning and you might have to give multiple innings, and you did?
Sí, que era la mentalidad que tenías cuando ya supiste, quizá voy a tirar más de una entrada ayer.
No, yo creo que mi mentalidad no cambia nunca. Simplemente salgo ahí a hacer mi trabajo, a tratar de sacar los outs lo más rápido posible. Y pues bueno, ayer obvio la primera salida en todo el año que tiro 2 innings, pero no estoy pensando en eso. Simplemente salgo ahí a hacer mi trabajo y que sean los innings que sean.
No, I'm just really thinking about doing my work as best as I can. Nothing ever changes when I go out there. Sure, I was able to throw my season high 2 innings, but nothing really changes from that.
Adrian, you continue to be in the midst of a really nice run of pitching. What continues to work for you so well?
¿Qué continúa a funcionar para ti durante esta trayectoria que tenés?
Seguir trabajando igual, seguir manteniéndome enfocado en preparar mi cuerpo todos los días para salir ahí a estar listo y pues seguir mejorando, seguir trabajando en cada cosa que yo sienta que necesito trabajar para poder terminar la temporada así.
just really working on things that I need to get done and make sure that I feel prepared every day to go out there. Just physically need to get myself ready to go, and that's how I'm able to keep up with how I'm doing for the season.
Great job last night. Thank you.
Thank you.
That was Adrian Morejon. We'll see if Adrian makes an appearance in this series finale against the Nationals as the Padres go for a series win. First pitch coming up at 1:10. Let's take a look at our starting pitching matchup between Nick Pivetta and MacKenzie Gore.
Let's take a look at who's on the bump today with our starting pitching preview on the Padres Radio Network.
On the mound for the Nats, left-hander MacKenzie Gore, 26 years old, the former third overall pick by the Padres in 2017. Gore in the midst of his best season to this point, 3-7, a 3.19 ERA, 16 starts, 93 innings, 123 strikeouts, leads the National League, only 27 walks given up. He's on pace for 263 strikeouts this season, so he strikes out a lot of guys. Last start against the Dodgers, he went 5 2/3 innings, 6 runs given up, 5 earned. He allowed 7 hits. He struck out 4 and walked 4. Before that start, which was kind of so-so, Gore was on a run of 5 straight quality starts. He put up a 1.45 ERA in that span. He now has 3 starts against his former team. The last one, let's be honest, it was a weird one. 5 innings, 5 earned runs, a homer allowed to Manny Machado. That was the game where Gore hit Jurickson Profar, and then Manny took him deep in one of the more memorable moments of last season. The arsenal for Gore, a 4-seam fastball, a curve, a slider, a changeup, and a cutter. Meanwhile, on the mound for the Padres, right-hander Nick Pivetta. The 32-year-old comes in a 3.64 ERA in 15 starts, 84 innings, 91 Ks, and 24 walks. Last start against the Royals, he took the no decision, 4 2/3 innings, 4 earned runs given up, 6 hits, and he allowed 2 home runs. That came after a great start in Arizona, where he allowed just 2 runs on 2 hits in 7 innings. The home run ball has been a real issue for Pivetta as of late. He's now allowed 5 home runs in his last 4 starts combined and 10 home runs allowed in his last 10 starts. That's after he gave up just 1 home run in his first 5 starts as a Padre. The Nationals have seen a lot of Pivetta, most of that when Pivetta was with the Phillies, but for whatever it's worth, the overall numbers against the Nationals have been rough. A 9.42 ERA in 43 innings against the Nationals, 13 home runs given up in those 43 innings. Last time he saw the Nats was in 2023 when he was on the Red Sox. He went 4 innings and a third, 4 earned runs on 5 hits. And the arsenal for Nick Pivetta, a 4-seam fastball, a curveball, a sweeper, a cutter, a sinker, and a slider. And that's a look at our starting pitching matchup here today. MacKenzie Gore for the Nationals, Nick Pivetta for San Diego. As always, thank you for listening to the EcoWater SoCal Padres pregame show. EcoWater SoCal, keeping it soft since 1925. Your water should be perfect. Well, the Nationals won on Monday. Padres bounced back with a nice win last night. What's in store in the rubber game of this 3-game series? Well, we're going to find out when we come back. Jesse Agler, Tony Gwynn Jr. have the full starting lineups, first pitch, and all the play-by-play. I'll talk to you on our post-game coverage. You're listening to your home for San Diego Padres baseball, 97.3 The Fan, and the Padres Radio Network. Enjoy the game, Padres fans.
Tony Gwynn Jr. here. Upgrade.